and welcome to episode 522 of the Awesome Comics Podcast, a place where the small press makes one hell of a big noise. My name is Vince Hunt, and joining me as always is the artist and creator of the epic webcomic series Vanguard, Dan Butcher.
Hello.
And it's getting hot in here, but please keep on all your clothes, Mr. Tony Esmond.
Not a fucking chance.
There's a time and a place for that, and it's next week when we celebrate this show, which is all about comics. This first 5 minutes is usually never about comics. So next week we are celebrating our 10th anniversary.
I
know we had the episode 500. Basically, we like to make a meal out of everything on here.
Yeah, we like the Queen. We got 2 birthdays.
And if someone opens a bag of crisps, we'll celebrate that. But next week is the official 10th anniversary. So, but it's just going to be a Three Amigos show.
Just
maybe a
little
little bit of live and direct.
We may be in person.
Maybe a little bit of live and direct.
Jangle. No, something.
No. Oh God, no. But this week, however, we do have another guest, and boy, you are in for a treat. Because we walked down the. If Memory Lane was a street, it's cobbled, isn't it? Memory Lane's cobbled, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
it's definitely cobbled.
It's for old fuckers like me.
Yeah, which is ironic because whenever I see a cobble on the street now, my knees say, "Don't do it, mate. Just don't do it." That's
those poor people live in the north. All their roads are like that, aren't they? Really steep. They have to push the bread up the hill.
They'll go around in carts and
what
the fuck? On their donkeys.
Yeah. Oh God. But yes, we finally got around to talking to David McDonald from Hibernia Comics, who you're going to learn
a pleasure, innit?
all about.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some classic titles, stuff that you won't have heard of. I haven't heard of some of these titles. There's one particular title that I actually am quite pleased to be talking about. But
you did a sex week at one point.
I did a little bit, and you'll find out why. Because I
you literally did a little dance in your chair.
I did. I found, and it's something because we're an audio show, you'll never see it. But I found another unicorn. That's all I gotta say. But it's a brilliant chat, and you'll learn a lot. And it's all about classic comics, especially the UK's, the old stuff, and keeping that alive. So lots of cool stuff to look forward to there, as well as a whole bunch of comics that we've been reading that we're going to recommend later in the show. And I'm just going to put a heads up now. If I sound a little funky, which I think over the 10 years of this show, the amount of times I've had a cold is because my sinuses just cause havoc. But I am currently positive with COVID as we record. I'm on the tail end of it. So there were many times leading up to this show that my lovely co-hosts had to remind me about stuff, because when the WhatsApp planning and talking about comics and stuff, my brain was somewhere else. But I tell you what, nothing gets you back in the room and back excited about stuff than talking about comics. And I immediately just wanted to buy a lot of comics after that chat.
Yeah.
Me too, yeah. But definitely go to his site and buy some. There's some great stuff on there. Yeah.
And we'll probably get you buying some more comics as well in a bit. But I just wanted to say, that's why I'm saying a little bit funky, and thank you to my co-hosts for being so lovely this week and nice.
Really?
Yeah. See, I'm gonna put them on blast now, right?
Go on.
They're nice people.
Fuck that! Don't start that rumor.
No, they're really nice. They're really nice and lovely people. But
I said that I was chatting to Mark from Santos Sisters this week, and he said, "Oh, you lot are good people." And I said, "Don't tell people that, Mark. You'll ruin our reputation."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what the reputation of this show would be, but maybe we can discuss that on next week's show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, let's talk about some comics. Should we talk about some classic?
Hell yeah.
Some classic comics. Yeah. So let's get on it. Let's talk Hibernia. Right then, folks, you ready to talk about some classics? Yes, because we are. This week we're joined by the mastermind behind Hibernia Comics, an outfit that we've talked about quite a few times
over the years,
a few times. And
I was just rereading Angry Planet yesterday,
nice.
which I bought a
Very good.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And we'll get into that as well as the latest offering that regular listeners might have heard a bit more about recently as well, and a whole heap of other publications dedicated to the wonderful world of like classic UK comics and beyond. So let's welcome to the show Mr. David McDonald. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
The behind the scenes is this is a very long time coming. Not as long as not
I've
as old
forgotten we
as-
tried to have you on once before. Yeah.
But eventually, like comics, we get there
All
in the
good
end.
things.
All good things.
very
All
true.
good things to those
Very
away.
true.
Which probably like is the case for many of like the articles or the reprints and stuff. There are people who want this stuff and have been waiting for it for years. But for
Oh
those,
man, with this stuff, years. Yeah.
But just to start us off, to make things easier, for those who aren't aware of like Hibernia Comics and what it is that you guys do, tell us more about it.
Well, we're based in Ireland, and I have been a fan of old British comics for as long as I've been a fan of comics. I've been a fan of British comics in particular. And what we do is we represent classics that might be a little bit forgotten or a little bit off the beaten track. So that's most of the comic reprints. And then we have another series called the Comic Archive, which kind of lifts the stone on artists, writers, processes, how comics are put together, or as a lot of the cases, how comics were put together. So we do a lot of interviews with art editors, with forgotten writers, forgotten artists, and not forgotten people. But you've got years ago there was you had Speakeasy and you had Amazing Heroes and you had all these fanzines, but they still all just kind of basically focused on American comics, which the British comics kind of were pushed aside a little bit or a little bit glossed over. So that's kind of where my interest in. It's kind of stuff that I'm interested in, and I put out there, and I'm hoping that other people are interested in it.
And those sort of comics as well, like the British comics, especially like the UK weeklies and all of that kind of stuff. Because sometimes you didn't know who the artists were, the credits were underneath it, unless you were fortunate enough later on some of these artists became big names. Not all of them did, but and some of them were artists from Europe that you don't find about until decades afterwards. I mean, I know when I got the Comics Archive book about like the Ghastly one about Scream and stuff, that came across the way I described those, almost felt like it was like a documentary about a certain comic in a magazine format. You know? And we
crave that stuff, don't we?
Yeah.
We really do.
Yeah. But where I kind of came across them sort of things first, based on British comics, was in Warrior itself, Dead Skin's Warrior.
Love
and
Warrior.
I'm sure for him it may have been a little bit of padding for the comic or something, but for me it was one of the more interesting parts of the comic. I remember specifically one by Jim Bakey on, I think the story was Twilight World, where he just talked about the design of the characters, the design of the world, and I just thought this was nearly as interesting as the story itself. So that's kind of that's the angle I take with them comic archives, is to just scratch the surface, see how they put together,
I think the thing is as well is a lot of the history of British comics, especially seemingly, is because it's not archived, because it's not written down. We're beginning to forget about it because sadly, a lot of these guys. I mean, it's only recently really that we lost Alan Grant and people like that. Carlos, they're drifting away, and it's culturally, and sort of almost in a business sense, we're beginning to forget about what's happened in the past.
Yeah, there is. And I think the Americans were ahead of the curve. They had their conventions in the 60s and 70s. And, you had Jack Kirby and Wally Wood and all these guys. They were celebrities in the 70s. They were celebrities in the 60s. Whereas, in the UK and in Ireland, it's like what comic artist was really well known. UK comic artist was really known in the 70s. You'd have a handful. You'd have Frank Hampson, Frank Bellamy, Don Lawrence. And outside of that, there weren't names other than them three names, Ken Reid, maybe a handful of names that were well known.
The big names were sort of like the newspaper strip people, wasn't it? And that's a different, that's a completely different ballgame, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think it was 2000 AD that broke the back of that a bit? I know Kevin O'Neill started, and you've got a brilliant interview, by the way, in the editor's cut with Kevin O'Neill. Lovely interview. But do you think it was that broke the back of getting the names out there?
100%, because looking back on through all the fanzines, because I kind of trawl fanzines looking for information, because sometimes you get little snippets of who wrote a story here or who wrote a story there, but the actual information on British comics in fanzines from the 70s and 80s, there's virtually none. And even if you read the reviews, there's reviews of Battle, there's reviews of 2000 AD, and they really are mealy-mouthed. They're kind of that crap.
Right. Okay.
As opposed to where's the next issue of Batman? And there's a little bit of a snobbery and snotty attitude that 2000 AD broke down. That 2000 AD just drove through that attitude, because it was something different. It was something new. You had the like of Dave Gibbons with his American aesthetic, bringing it to a British comic. You Kevin O'Neill, which was just, indescribable, his artwork. So you had something, 2000 AD was something fresh, something new. And I think that directed people's attention and says, hold on a minute, we're fans of American comics and we appreciate American comics. But here's something very new, but that's coming from a British comic tradition, but it's pulling stuff from the States, it's pulling stuff from Europe. But hold on a minute, it is coming from a British style, British, content. And I think as you go into the 80s, you start to see in them fanzines more content about Battle, more content. I've seen a review of Whoopi, and someone mentioning Tom Patterson's artwork in it and saying like, wow, look at this stuff. He's like Basil Wolverton or whatever from the States. And, but it still goes back to the States. But I think 2000 AD just broke through and said, hold on a minute, British comics are good too. Sometimes much better.
I agree, man. I was chatting to a couple of friends about Emerson yesterday, and we were saying like, if Ken Reed was in America, he'd be an underground comic creator. He'd be lauded as the sort of coolest shit in America, wouldn't he? He'd be up there with Crumb. But we had him in kids comics. But the thing about our kids comics and about our weekly comics is they were selling numbers that the Americans could only fucking dream of.
Oh yeah.
Weekly, not even monthly, weekly. They'd love those numbers. Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
And right up into the 80s, like I know it hit a cliff in about 85, and it just went off. But the numbers they were selling, and not only the numbers they were selling, the numbers they were syndicating across Europe. There was all these that were syndicated right across Europe. So the actual sales, if you took sales of, let's say, 2000 AD had a kind of a steady 100,000 all over the week, they were also selling all over Europe as well. Huge in Spanish. So I go back to the question, 2000 AD 100% shone a light on 2000 on British comics.
I picked this up. This is a French Janus Stark, for example. It's an early manga almost. It's like incredible stuff. And
the unusual thing about them Janus Stark is that when the French company, when they ran out of British reprints, it's one of the few they commissioned their own and kept it going.
Yeah, I read about that. That's great. Yeah. I did quite heavily try and pitch 2000 AD that I wrote Janus Stark, The Wilderness Years, and I was in a bar with them at the time, and I think they just laughed at me. But one day.
Now, hey, I'd read it.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Thank you. But the thing is, as well, is it's like did you get access to a big wealth of comics to be able to reproduce a lot of your stuff, or how do you find your content?
Well, I suppose I've been collecting comics since I was a kid, right? A stint in hospital when I was, 11 or 12, and people said he likes comics, so everyone brought me comics, and I think that was what kind of got me into it. So over the years, I would buy a collection up, and then ancillary stuff would come in with it. So like Smash, the IPC Smash, I just got one issue of Smash with a collection of Valiants I bought. Never heard of it before. And I thought, this is fantastic. So you go down another rabbit hole and you collect them and you collect them and you collect them. So, over 30, 35 year period, you can amass a lot of stuff. And it's pretty much what I read nearly all the time. I'll pick up something and go down a rabbit hole and you'll read, the complete adventures of whatever. The latest one I'm reading is Doctor Who in Countdown by Jerry Haylock. Jerry Haylock's a new artist to me. He is.
The color they used in that, I think, is still so cool.
Oh, it's just, so that's another rabbit hole, and this is what often amuses people. I'm not particularly familiar with Doctor Who. I only saw the first Doctor Who I saw was the Matt Smith.
Sorry about that.
Wow,
but you know what? I enjoyed it because I wasn't familiar with it. Irish telly didn't carry it.
Right. Okay. Okay. We hear that from a lot of Americans as well. They didn't see it till Christopher Eccleston or something like that.
So, but I was familiar enough with the character from the Doctor Who comic itself. But that's what I mean about going down rabbit holes. I'll find an artist like Jerry Haylock's a new name to me, relatively, only about a year and a half heard about. So I'm looking through his artwork in The Eagle. I'm looking through his artwork in Countdown. So that kind of where I get the ideas for the reprints. It's just something I like.
So how does that work with the sort of rights and content? So you can't. I mean, I'm just looking at the Indestructible Man at the moment, which I bought off you a couple of days ago, and this is some old stuff, man. You can always tell it's older because it's that sort of almost single page story thing at the start. So where do you get? Because they're very clean files. It's very readable files. How do you get the rights, and how do you get the stuff to print?
The rights is most of the stuff I get the rights from are currently with Rebellion. So I have a good relationship with Rebellion. I've helped them out over the years. They've helped me out. And I think it's a fairly reciprocal relationship we have with them. They know their stuff in Rebellion. They know what they have. They know what they're sitting on. And they're happy for me to mine that section of it, to kind of let the lesser known stuff. But still, it might be a good artist, good writer, solid story, but that mightn't be commercial, or it mightn't be long enough for them to do a collection of. And that's kind of where I'll come in. So as to the content itself, I'm sure I have going around here. I'm looking. I don't know how many comics I have. I'm sure I have 20,000 comics, whatever. Yeah. I'm not sure. But I have nearly everything I need to scan. So the process is that I have a good scanner. We scan it. I send it to Richard Pierce. Richard Pierce is my co in Hibernia. He actually lives in Scotland. He lives up in Inverness in Scotland. And he is just amazing at restoration of the artwork. He can take especially in the latest one, I'm sure we'll come to it, the Hold Hill 109 pages in The Running Man were atrocious. There was all ink bleed coming through from the back of the pages. And
they weren't on the greatest paper, were they? I mean, we're the first to admit it. Yeah.
And really what he can do with that artwork and how to clean it up, and he does go to extraordinary lengths to clean it and to represent it. He will re-letter stuff if it needs re-lettering. You do not see the work that he puts into this. He is incredible. I'm really lucky to have him. He's brilliant. So that once I have the rights in place, once I have the comics themselves to scan, well then that's two of the three pieces. Then we get Richard on board, and Richard cleans it and presents it for the printer. We get it printed, and then we put it on sale. So the print runs themselves are all very small because, I get a lot of requests saying like, oh, will you reprint this? Will you reprint that? The market is small. So in general, I do not reprint unless I know something will sell.
They're like proper limited editions, sort of like,
Yeah, they really are, because I finance, these are all self-financing. So if one doesn't sell, it pushes the rest of the publications back, because it just fine. We don't really make money out of this. If whatever money is made is put into the print.
The next product.
It's indie comics publishing.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's almost like get it while it's hot. Is the way I think about it with your site. Is I'll see it, and sometimes I'll go there and it's gone because I haven't heard about it quickly enough. There's a bit of that sometimes. Yeah. I did that. I think I did that with the Brian Lewis Captain Condor at one point. Although I do own that now. But okay, cool. So, but they didn't 2000 AD get buy in a big bulk of comics from before they existed, isn't that? Am I right in thinking that? So this is where a lot of this reprint stuff they're doing at the moment is coming from.
Do you mean the IP? Do you mean the properties themselves?
Yes, yeah. And they bought in, and actually they've actually got the physical
the bound
comics
volumes.
As well. Yeah.
They have that. I'm fairly sure it's incomplete, but I think the library is pretty impressive. From what I hear, the library is very impressive.
You're not been up there to have a nose. I bet you wish you could, though.
No, I'd love to go over, but not yet. If I get the invite, I'll be there.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an insight, listeners. Obviously, this is an audio show, but we're lucky enough to see that behind David, there's a lot of classic books on the shelves, but there's a lot of like very old, very neatly stacked, filed comics. There's the brown paper, isn't it? That's the dirty paper.
You can always tell. Whenever I'm going through a magazine box at a comic mart, that colour paper is the one I always go to immediately. Because it's always going to be a good old British comic, isn't it?
God, and also there's just the smell of it. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's
just
brilliant.
Good stuff, man.
Just because it looks neat and tidy doesn't mean it was like that. Just before I came on here, it got
The other one I bought recently, it's downstairs. I brought it out with me. Is Slave of the Screamer, which is the one before the Running Man. Is that right?
Yes.
That was the one that came out by Tom Tully and Jesus Blasco. That's the gorgeous book, man.
Yeah.
But it's again quite obscure, I'm going to say.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. The hook for me on that one was Jesus Blasco's artwork. He is just incredible. I'm fairly sure Brian Boland cites him as an influence. He does black and white art just incredibly. Most people will know his artwork probably from the Steel Claw.
Yes. Yeah.
But throughout Europe, he has done countless, countless comics. But it's funny, even their British work in Europe is relatively obscure in Europe. It's not awfully well known. Right. But I just really like the concept of Slave of the Screamer. It's batshit. Right, I don't know. Have you read it yet?
But, no, not yet. I've had a scan through. I haven't read it, so I kind of know the concept. But please go ahead. Yeah,
it's nut stuff. They really, you have to think the writers and artists on some of these, the writers especially, were having lots of liquid lunches, when they're heading off to write this stuff. But I'm a sucker for this B movie stuff. It's real B movie. Slave of the Screamer.
It's sort of Night of the Blood Apes kind of stuff, isn't it? But toned down for a comic. Yeah,
100%. And I'm a real sucker for that sort of B movie stuff. It's dark, it's noir, it's daft, very, very funny, and very, very harsh too. Very hard for like what's aimed at. What was that? It was published in 72, 73, something like that, and aimed at 8 to 10-year-old kids. And you know what? There's some nut stuff in there, and that's why I love that stuff, and I love representing it. And I think other people appreciate it too, because I think always get good feedback from them. So I hope, let's say, the curation of what's been presented is appreciated, and I think it is.
Oh yeah, they're beautiful looking books. I mean, if you go to your sort of your store and you see I've noticed that. From a design perspective, they're lovely looking books as well. You have
lovely spines as well. Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
everything.
That's all down to Richard Pierce. He does the design on the books. He does everything. He is brilliant.
Yeah. I find it, because I'm not a graphic designer. These two are, David. Okay. So I find it's always good to have friends who are. Okay. That's why I try and endear myself to them. Yeah.
But when you have these like new publications, and like you say, you just whatever. It just gets you going, and whether it be the art or whatever it may be, then you've put the work in, you've made this reprint, and like I say, it's a short run, but then begins the next phase, isn't it? Which is putting this book out into the world and letting people know about it.
Yeah.
But you're also letting people. I mean, it's a specific. It's almost like you've got a targeted audience in a way, because there is a specific. Do you remember this? Yeah. Are you like me? Do you remember this? And how is like getting the word out about these things so much different? I think it must be so much different than if you just had a comic. If you were just here's my comic for everyone. This is like
so much different from the PR we get on our emails. Man, we get all these PR on the emails. These brand new exciting. But it's totally different for you. It's very targeted. I guess.
And you must have learned so much because you've made quite a few publications now. What are some of the learnings you've had? And what is your strategy now?
Well, the learnings I found was that no matter what someone says on Facebook will sell. and the thousands of people that are going to be interested in it. There isn't. It's very niche.
Yeah.
It's very niche.
Yeah.
And to sell some of these books, no more than Slave of the Screamer, it's pretty obscure, right? So you have to have a hook somewhere. So the hook is the writer and the artist, rather than the title. Because the title it came from is Valiant. Valiant is dead since 1976. How many people are knocking around that actually read it weekly? They're getting on, they're getting old. So you have to be able to sell it beyond that. And how you sell it beyond that is basically the creators. So nearly all of these books are, if it's not a title like, let's say, Timequake, that you can pitch it to 2000 AD fans, then you have to have an artist or writer that you can pitch it towards. Because it's no more than coming out with a brand new comic and a brand new concept. It's unknown by the majority of people that we're going to say it to. So the hook, for the most part, is the writer or the artist. Or like this one, the latest one, The Running Man, it's Steve McManus, it's 2000 AD, it's Battle, it's, that's the kind of hook there. So yeah, it's over the years I have learned that the first one we did was Doomlord, and that was a complete disaster financially, but it was a brilliant learning curve. It was absolutely brilliant learning curve.
Why was that? Because Doomlord is, I mean, I would think that's
quite a big name.
Quite a big name.
Yeah.
Well, the problem was that 20, however many years ago, 5 years ago, I hadn't a notion what I was doing. I said, suddenly, I'm going to be a publisher. This is a great idea. And I got the rights. I printed up 2,500 of them. And I said, I'm going to sell these online 25 years ago, which there was no particular online 25 years ago. It was a disaster. It took me... no, having said that, I did manage to sell quite a lot of them. I managed to get them into Forbidden Planet. I managed to get them into quite a lot of shops all around the UK and in Ireland. And it eventually wiped its face. But what I found out is, if you're a one-man band and you're trying to do this, comic shops, it's just not worth it. Because the cover price you get, they'll take 50, 60% off it. Yeah. You'll wait 6 months for your money. And because they have to sell through there as well, and I understand that.
Yeah, mate, if you're lucky sometimes. Yeah.
So as a one-man band selling to comic shops, other than outside maybe one or two, that's not a runner. So then that affects your print runs, it affects your overheads, it affects your stock. So eventually what I have found was that anything between 300 and 500 copies, depending on, I can sell. Anything over that, I'm sitting on stock that will just affect doing the next comic. So yeah, over the years I've found that kind of is the works best. That if you're selling these 300 to 500, you can sell them reasonably quick to move on to the next book. Okay. I have looked at Kickstarters, and I'm kind of envious of people that have the time and the amount of money that Kickstarters seem to raise. But I work full time as well beyond this, and Kickstarters just seem, and by all accounts, I don't have any experience with running a Kickstarter. It seems like a huge amount of time commitment to run a Kickstarter.
It can be, it can be. Yeah. But I think because you've kind of got that base now of, I guess you've got a place, so you put them in an envelope. I mean, when I bought them from you, they were days later. They seemed to appear in my door. Yeah. You've already got that, and I think that's one of the places where people stumble with Kickstarter is actually fulfilling the orders and sending them out. Maybe we put you in touch with someone who's run a few Kickstarters. Maybe consider it. I'd say,
if you've got the shipping part locked in, the kind of setting up of a campaign's relatively simple.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And just not over promising. I think the mistake people make on Kickstarter is they promise all these stretch goals and extras and, pages of art and stuff like that. And all you're going to do is just sell the book through because that's all you want to do.
Which I think people do treat it as almost a pre-order.
They started doing that, haven't they, for a couple of years now? Yeah. Anyway, we don't want to influence your business model working.
No,
it's none of our business, but
I'm a little bit old-fashioned too in that I like to actually have something to sell in my hand.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I'm a little bit kind of like, I don't want to promise something, take their money, and then go like, Haven't got it yet.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rebellion go. No, you're not having that, by the way.
Yeah.
You can always get the book printed and then do the Kickstarter. You don't have to. Do you know what I mean? You can already have the product.
Go on, we're almost having a business meeting.
Yeah, no more pressure. No more pressure.
But I mean, you figured out a system.
Yeah,
since that Doom Lord that has worked out. I mean, did that after that Doom Lord sort of learning, and obviously with like the Comics Archive stuff, was that a sort of obviously the Doom Lord didn't go the way you thought it was going to, so you had to sort of almost start again and build up. Was the Comics Archive a good way of sort of learning more about that?
No, I think the Comic Archive just was kind of nearly just a separate thing. Right. I did the Doom Lord. That set me back a couple of years. I did the 13th Floor then from Screen by Wagner Grant and Jose Ortiz.
That's a lovely book.
And then financial crashes and small children and all the rest of that put everything aside for another while. And I did a couple of small press things. And I had started off doing One-Eyed Jack and The Death of Valiant. I kind of stumbled across talking to Jan Shepherd, who was the original art editor of 2000 AD. And something she said to me, which goes back to our early comments about 2000 AD creators and all the rest of that. So I was talking to her on the phone and she said, "Why on earth are you interested in talking to me about my job 40 years ago?" And I said, you created the Judge Dredd logo. I said, you were instrumental in the look of 2000 AD. And she said, but it was a job.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. I said, it's a job. But I said, if you look at it another way, I said, the comics were like Saturday morning entertainment. Ye entertained a generation of kids. And you're kind of the people behind it. So I said, there is people interested in this. So
that's kind of refreshing, David. I've got to tell you,
it's so funny though, because we're now in the generation of the cult of personality. Comic creators can be rock stars. You know, they got lines at conventions, and yet, you know, probably from that 80s generation beforehand, it was like, oh, you did so many comics. Why'd you do that? Yeah. Well, because it was my job. And then like, you know, oh, how did you create this? Well, I got up, I had a cigarette, cup of coffee, went to my desk, did it, and then finished my day.
We had a 4-hour liquid lunch.
Yeah. But it is fascinating because it was like that. I think that's what makes it so much more fascinating. It's like they didn't, you know, they weren't shouting from the rooftops about it. They weren't going out, you know, thinking they're hot shit. They were just they were good at the jobs and they did the work.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the people who go to Lawless and Enniskillen, this is like crack to them. Genuinely.
Totally,
They love it, don't they? Yeah. I'm guessing they're kind of two of... Do you do Lawless? And I know you do Enniskillen, don't you?
Yeah, I've never been to Lawless. We're talking about going over next year, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'd love to go. By all accounts, it's supposed to be a great show.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. And massively up your street. Yeah, as I'm sure you know. Yeah.
It's 9th and 10th of May, 2026.
Oh, Dan, have you already got the dates in? Look, bloody hell! Yeah, already doing it.
That to me was the weekend, didn't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're doing these interviews and stuff, then I guess you have to be quite professional about it. But have you had any real sort of the fanboy moments? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, much like us, like doing this show, there are these moments where we're talking to people, and then, like, as soon as we finish talking to them, we look at each other and
we're
go,
like schoolgirls.
We're like, what just happened? What just happened? We had a genuine, normal conversation with someone we've been reading their comics for 20 years.
Yeah, like Jeff Smith or Garth Ennis or Mark Miller or something, and you're like, oh, bloody hell.
What are some of the great pinch me moments that you've had?
Definitely, hands down, Kevin O'Neill getting in touch, because we had done Cosmic Comics. It was the first collection we did with Rebellion, which collected Kevin's more off the beaten track work for IPC. So there was Captain Klepp in it. There was illustrations from Line Annual. There was, you know, kind of the more humory sort of stuff that he did for 2000 AD, and it Dash Decent was in it. And so we did it. We published it. It went out. It went down really well and all the rest of that. And a couple of months later, I got an email through Gosh Comics in London and said, Kevin really liked your collection and he would like to do a second edition with more of his artwork in it. And I was a bit like, oh, sounds brilliant.
Right.
So next thing, he gets in touch with us. He completely designs the title page. He gives us all this artwork that has never been published, and rare artwork. And just to get working with someone like Kevin O'Neill was just amazing. And he was so gracious. He was so kind. He couldn't have been nicer. And we put the comic together at I'm not sure, it was 18 pages of his own. We did it like the Whizzer and Chips, like a pull-out section. And Kev designed the page on it called Kev's Own comic. So it was like an insert into Cosmic Comics. And so when we did it, we published it, we sent it back to him, and he got his 5 copies. And we both got such a lovely email back from him just saying that he was so pleased with how it came out and thanked us for doing it. And that was the real pinch me moment. It was like, feckin' Kevin O'Neill. That's the business, So yeah, and you know what? The other thing is getting to talk to people like John Wagner, like Steve McManus, there's countless other people that 15-year-old me pinches myself sometimes and says, "You have his email." I'm gonna print that email off.
I know what you mean.
You're doing okay. You're doing something right. But it's lovely to be able to, I'm sure some of the editors and writers are going, Jesus, this idiot here again asking more questions about Comic Archive and whatever. But people are so gracious and kind with their time.
But can I just to interrupt you there, David? We were talking about the editor's cut because we reviewed it a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things I just was astounded with is the work you've got in there from Kevin O'Neill that I did not have a clue existed. And my favourite, the one we talked about in the show, was Robbie the Rabbit. Fucking hell, you'd never believe that, would you?
No,
you'd never believe it.
You wouldn't until you look at it and you kind of go like, okay.
Yeah, I can see a bit of that. There's a bit of Kevin in that face, isn't there? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, and again, a lovely interview, man. Yeah, and even the stuff John Payne was really interesting. And there's a little hint in the interview that might get republished at some point.
No, I wish, but
right.
I think that ship has sailed.
Okay, that's a shame.
We did speak about it by email as a possibility, and then unfortunately he passed away. Yeah. So nothing ever came of it beyond that. But what that did, there's even other pieces that he did that I didn't know about. He did a good few bits for Atomica. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Yep.
That it would be lovely at some point to see all these lesser known pieces of his collected up into one book. But now, rights and all the rest of that, that's a different ball game.
That late 80s, early 90s stuff with all those different little pop-up British companies, I can imagine is a right mess.
And it's likely beyond my means to get something like that nailed down, even though I'd love to do it. But you never know. Gosh or Knockabout or some of them may be in a position to do something like that, which would be lovely to see. It really would. But you go back to even you were asking about the editor's cut and the Comic Archive. These take an awful lot of time to produce. So I'm very slow at this stuff. So let's say the editor for Roy Preston that was in this was done 4 years ago. So it just takes time for us to get all this stuff together. And then the last piece that's in it, the cover to 2008 to 3 that was never published. Yeah. We got that, I would say, 3-4 days before we went to print.
Nice.
Robin Spitz sent it to me and he said, "Were you looking for this?" And I said, "No, but but can I have it?" And he said, "Yeah, go for it." So they are very time consuming and they take kind of a circuitous gestation.
But I guess because it's more like a historical document, do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's that kind of thing, rather than this is the newest hotness right now. If you're asking about how things were then, it is evergreen.
It's not a race to get it out.
Yeah, that chat. So it's like it will be when it's ready. This is good to go.
Yeah, it is. It's a little bit like that, and it's a little bit as well. I try and keep each one to a theme of some sort. That
Yeah, I
they're
was going to ask
striving
about that
for.
because I've got the Battling Britons one. Is that the one you did
Yes,
as well?
but
That was
Blazing
really
Battle
great.
Action, isn't it?
Ballet, sorry.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I try to keep them to a theme of some sort. Now it might be a loose enough theme. The editor's cut, we called it the editor's cut because most of the people that in it worked as an editor of some form or shape. So the editor's cut, it's like, from the editor's floor, it's like the bits and pieces that people may have missed and all the rest of that. But I have another one in the works. It's kind of floating around. I'd love to get it out next year, but we'll see. I definitely have a lot of Massimo Belardinelli artwork that has never been published.
Mate, he is. I've said this. I say this about every 6 months ago. My favourite 2000 AD artist.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
He really is. I think he's so underestimated because we had the McMahon Slane that followed his stuff, and everyone went nuts for that.
Yeah.
I think I actually preferred his stuff.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
Really, really incredible. His one letdown was humans. His humans never looked human enough.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
For the fantastic work for the for the aliens or the warp
Ace
spasm
Truck and Co. would be the most popular underground comic in America.
Yeah.
If it was
God,
out,
yeah.
if it was in Zap, people would be losing their mind for that comic.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. He is. I suppose about all the early 2000 AD artists, he's probably the one that's most underappreciated.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. Possibly, maybe because he wasn't sometimes best served by the best scripts, But on the whole, he's a really, really amazing artist. I'm looking forward to getting this one out there to show what we have, the unpublished stuff that we have of him.
Oh, so good. He sort of disappeared off the playing field for a while, didn't he? I remember being in a comic shop, 20 years ago, and Dave Gibbons was in this comic shop, and there was a load of little crew of fans in there with me, mates of mine, and Dave said, "Come on, lads, have you heard what's happened to him? Has anyone heard of him?" And I think Dave was sort of actively trying to find him for a chat, and I think he just sort of retired and thought, "Fuck it."
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I know the last sort of work he did for Britain was in the Fleetway comic, the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Ah, okay.
Right.
That was a monster seller for Fleetway. I think it was the early 90s. And they reprinted, it was a fortnightly. So they did, as far as I know, they alternated the issues. So one issue would be a reprint of American material. Was it like Archie material or something like that? And then the second week would be British material. And that's his last work for the UK. It's in that. But a lot of other people did work on that, like Richard Elson, the 2000 AD artist, worked on that and all the rest. Okay. And then, as far as I know, he worked for the Italian market for a little bit. And then he had bad health. And Robbie Cox, he's a guy that runs the Massimo Belardinelli appreciation on Facebook.
Right.
He was in touch with them and got commissions off him in the early 2000s. And then he passed away then. I'm not sure when he passed away, but in around then. But he did disappear. Unfortunately, he disappeared. I think it's like a lot of artists in the 90s as well. His face or style didn't fit the 2000 AD that were published at the time. Right. So a lot of artists, like Ron Smith, Massimo Belardinelli, a lot of kind of were phased out. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unfortunate period, wasn't it? Yeah, I agree, man. Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is, did the obviously Battles just had its 50th anniversary? Am I right in saying that? Yeah. Did you get involved in all that sort of that stuff? Because I know, wasn't Enniskillen round that?
It was, it was. Well, I suppose I had published Blazing Battle Action 2 years ago, which is the history of battle.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good.
I still have some of them for sale if anyone's interested.
That is absolutely my favourite of that run of those books. That's so good. Yeah, really good.
Very good. That's most of that is written by David Bishop, and then the Action Force piece at the end is written by myself.
Cool.
On it. But no, I wasn't particularly involved in it, other than just to say battle is great, Get out there and read it. But Enniskillen was brilliant, and fair play to Paul Trimble and all the guys up there. They had all the the battle crew over that was available to come, with the exception of Pat Mills, which was a pity. He couldn't come or didn't come or whatever it was, but it would have been great to get his input on it.
Very
as
much
well.
so. For our American listeners who don't know about Battle, it had Charlie's War, D-Day Dawson, Darky's Mob, Dredger, the Fist of Jimmy Chiang, Helmet of Hammer Force, HMS Nightingale, Johnny Red, Major Easy, One-Eyed Jack. It had so much in it. So many iconic strips. It's unbelievable they all were in it. Yeah.
And I have to say, my guilty pleasure from Battle is Storm Force.
Fucking get in!
Fucking Vince loves Storm Force.
Yes!
Fucking loves it.
Yes!
Storm Force is like it's a bizarre mix of X-Men, Thunderbirds, Action Force. It's them all squished together.
I mean, they're action figures that never got action figures. And
that tarantula is such a good character.
It's just amazing. And that's, I mean, anyone listening to
at last.
We are
been talking
unicorns
about this for 10 years.
We are unicorns, David. No, because it's hard to describe, because if you look at on the big map of comics, Storm Force is the sort of thing that's seen as like they lost Action Force and then they just came up with this, and there's all these sort of stories. But I was a kid and I was reading it and I loved it. I mean, it made me a lifelong Vanyo fan, just full stop. And like one of my greatest pleasures, like since we started this pod, is going to comic marts or going on eBay and getting the battles that with Stormforce, then Eagle, and then and I've been scanning them just to make a little so I can read them myself.
He's made his own trade. This is how addicted he is, isn't it?
Yeah, not for publication. It's just so that I can one day. But that's why I can totally appreciate the scanning of the work and stuff, because it is to get it right so you can read it. Yeah. It's a different ball game. But Stormforce is like,
there's got to be a market for that, isn't there? There's got to be out there somewhere.
I'd say so, and I'd say it's something that Rebellion will look at down the line. Definitely with the Action Force link to it, that it probably has legs to collect it. And you know what? It's good stuff.
It's a great fun. It's a great read now. It's fun.
Like
it's silly
the
fun.
Artwork, Vanyo and John Cooper does the bulk of it. And it's written mostly by James Tomlinson as James Nicholas. And it's created by Barry Tomlinson.
Yeah,
of course.
When he was on the show,
we talked about it, didn't we?
Briefly, and I geeked out then.
Ex-2000 editor Richard Burton had a hand in creating it as well.
Right.
So you never know.
You never know.
It could be coming.
They've brought out weirder stuff, haven't they? Do you know what I mean?
You have, and that's going back to Rebellion. That's one of the things that I really like about them. They're not afraid to take a punt on something odd, and it's good. They could have sat back and they could have just pumped out Trigon Empire, Charlie's War, and Steel Claw, and they're surefire sellers. But they've dipped their foot into the girls' comics. The
Misty stuff,
but
they also give it a lovely package as well. Like Trigon Empire, I know you said it's an obvious thing, but they did variant hardback covers, and there's some Chris Weston covers
the Wildcat
to it.
stuff as well. Is it Rebellion who got hold of the Wildcat stuff? Yeah, because I've got like
they put out a couple of trades of that, didn't they? Is that right?
Yeah. Turbo Jones and is it Lona? I think something like that.
Wildcat was the comic that was about 3 years too late.
Yeah,
it was
the one I was reading as well.
Beautiful artwork, hit the right tone for kind of between Eagle and 2000 AD, and it was just too late. It just, if that, I do think if that had been 2 or 3 years previous, it would have been a success.
Yeah,
it was a really good comic.
Yeah, but
is there anything? Go on, sorry, mate.
No, it just speaks to those sort of titles. Like I'll have a title like that. Tony will have a title. Dan will have a title. You'll have a title. We'll have it because there was. Even though you hear of these big names, everyone talks about 2000 ADs, the Judge Dreads, or a lot of these other titles, but a lot of us have that one strip that it feels like that was our strip. No one else like that, like I like. And because I think because those things don't get reprints, they don't get talked about, they don't have fan sites, and they don't have all of this, it intensifies the nostalgia that we have for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I think these sort of publications that you guys do, it almost you must get so many questions of like, oh, have you thought about doing this one? Have you thought about doing that one?
All the time. It's you know, when is Martin's Marvelous Mini coming out? Like, and I'm saying like soon.
I mean, there's so many sports comics out there as well that we're just not touching on anymore.
Yeah,
no, it's not. And
Joe Colquhoun drew a load of them. It's like, yeah.
And also, I don't think people have a real concept of how big Roy the Rovers is. That's so forgotten now in British comics.
Still,
Roy
really
the
readable.
Rovers was enormous.
Sports manga comics are fucking massive.
I know
the readership out there.
Yeah,
I was thinking about tonight's show earlier, David, and I was thinking we're watching Squid Game on telly, me and the missus, and I thought this is fucking Harry 20 on the Hard Rock. They've all got numbers on. They're all in a sort of prison thing. They're all trying to escape. So that's where they got it from. I've decided.
Rip.
Yeah.
Stick with that, huh? but going back to Guilty Comics, there's one story, and I'm not sure you're familiar with it. It's drawn by Jose Casanovas Jr., I think, and it appeared in Tiger towards the end of Tiger, and it really is the most batshit story you can read, and it's worth seeking it out just to read it. It's about a shape-shifting alien that comes to Earth because he is a BMX fanatic and he wants to compete in BMX tournaments.
Brilliant.
That's it. How could that story have been pitched?
How pissed were they?
Yeah. You know, that sounds like something that would be published now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It is brilliant. It's just pure daftness. But
that sounds like a
I won't be
book I would
publishing that
definitely read.
either.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
I'm trying to remember who was the wrestler in Tiger. Who was the
Johnny Cougar.
Johnny Cougar. Why is that? Seems like a no-brainer to me to bring back. The art in it is absolutely crisp.
Yeah,
gorgeous art.
Because they did Death Wish from Tiger, didn't they? Because that's the one I got, obviously the Wagner collection. But
I think John Gilliott drew it, and I can't remember the name of the guy that drew it after that. But anyway, stuff like Tiger is just full. But then, you know, is there a market for sports comics? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to know because it does seem to be a specific type of person that will go back and read comics from the youth. Do sports comics sell? Is it because sports comics are very dated because they're set very much in the here and now? So, you know,
and the sports have changed so much. No matter what sport it is, it's changed so much.
The haircuts of Roy the Rovers, they've well changed.
So I don't know. Is it like do they still have the same? You know, if you look back and you're reading, you know, Billy's Boots from 1976, and you know he's lost his bloody boots again. And he's playing crap. You know, does it hold the same interest? You know, once you know the story and once it, I don't know. Maybe that's an issue with sports comics.
Yeah. Well, it's something like a Scream. There's an evergreenness to it because it's so specific. Even some of the collection of those stories are so weird, and so from the difference between them is like, you know.
And I think Scream definitely has the it has the nostalgia factor, but it also has the what if it wasn't cancelled? Could it have gone on and become another 2000 AD? Because it had a great creators working with it, solely down to Simon Furman and Ian Rimmer were the editors on it, but also Robin Smith, who was the art editor of 2000 AD.
He's definitely the hidden hero of a lot of British weeklies, isn't he?
He was the kind of unofficial art editor of Scream, and they were all fans of 2000 AD. So that's why you get the like Steve Dillon and Brendan McCarthy and all these like 2000 AD artists suddenly starting to moonlight on Scream. And you didn't really get them. You didn't get Brendan McCarthy or Steve Dillon or anyone like that working on the Eagle, for example. You know. So Scream does seem to have that little bit of lost potential. What could it have been?
I think Scream has almost like a mythic quality to it. Like you're right, because it was that sort of short-lived big burst of creativity, and you also had like Alan Moore worked in it very briefly.
Yeah. And another comic that has taken on that as well is Action. Action has taken on that mythic thing of being the bad boy, the comic that got banned, and
It got ripped up on the news, didn't it, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it did. And then when you go back and read it, it's pretty violent. But you know what? If you read Warlord the same week, which was from DC Thompson, it's pretty violent. It's par for the course for 70s comics, especially post 1974. The comics were violent. They were copying what was on the telly. You know?
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, Action did go overboard a little bit, but but Action now has got that kind of mythic kind of bad boy, you know, the Seven Penny Nightmare and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
And that does, I suppose, bring me in nicely into The Running Man, which is...
yes, we're going to bring that one up. So that's the one that you just launched at Enniskillen, I'm going to say. Is that right, David? Yeah.
So the Running Man is our latest of the Fleetway File series, which is the 7th. Yes, it's the 7th. And it's the complete story from Action of The Running Man. It's about a British athlete who goes to the States and is stitched up by the mob to look like the mob guy's son. And it's extraordinarily violent. Really well written by Steve McManus, who was the future 2000 AD editor then. Really well paced. And the artist Horatio Lalia, who would be really well known across Europe. So it was something that we looked at a couple of years ago, and we talked to Steve McManus about it as well. And he liked the idea of putting together a collection of his writing, because he hasn't done a lot of writing out, because obviously he was too busy editing. But outside of 2000 AD work, he's anything I think that's credited to Ian Rogan in 2000 AD is Steve McManus. I'm fairly sure of that.
Right,
so backed up with The Running Man is a short story also by Steve McManus called Hold Hill 109. It's about holding a hill in World War II, small British group of troops holding a hill, a strategic hill. And it's really short, but the storytelling, it's a masterclass in storytelling. It really is. The art is by Jim Watson. And Jim Watson is one of them artists that, as a kid, I really disliked his artwork. And as an adult, now you come back and go, wow, this guy is just technically absolutely brilliant. Actually, there's a few artists like that. I don't know. It's like Eric Bradbury was another artist that he drew Doomlord for years, and I always missed when he started drawing Doomlord. I missed Heinzel. He was a German artist that had drawn it first. And I look back on it now, and you go, these guys were amazing. They really, really were amazing. Technically brilliant, and just master storytellers. So sorry, I'm waffling on a bit there.
No, this is all good.
No, fine.
The Running Man is it's a cracking thriller. It's based. There's no science fiction in it. There's no ghost. It's a straightforward thriller, start to finish, breakneck speed. It's a great.
What was the year that originally came out? Can you remember?
I'm pretty sure 76.
Okay, yeah. So I'm guessing it was sort of contemporary with a lot of movies like, I don't know, All the President's Men and The French Connection and Parallax View and pre-Star Wars movies. I'm guessing. Yeah. Okay.
1976. The both of them come from 76. But the Hold Hill 109 was 76 in battle as well.
Right.
But yeah, you look at Action. And you can see how many of the stories are just taken from film or television and just, hook Joe. Hello?
Yeah.
But in a similar way, 2000 AD when it started, we had the Bionic Man, didn't we? We had the Harlem Globetrotters. Yeah, 100%. It was very similar. Yeah.
And that's how, because I'm not sure who I've heard speak about this from back in the day, but they said that because the time to set up a new comic was so short, I think they usually had like maybe a 2 or 3 month window to get a brand new weekly comic up and running. And weekly comics are hungry. You have to have, good 24, 26 pages of comic content every week without fail, and then your editorials on top of it. So, a 2 or 3 month period to set something up like this is very short. So they took concepts wherever they got them.
Yeah. I think I've heard Pat talk about that, because obviously Pat had, he's done Misty, he's done Action, he's done Battle, he's done 2000 AD. It was almost like a rolling job for him at one point. We'd be the editor for a few months and then move on to the next project. And they'd say, "Oh, can you go and start a girls comic or a sci-fi comic or and
create something." And you know what? Going back to Pat John Wagner, Alan Grant.
Yeah.
There was other guys, Tom Tully, Scott Goodall. They chew through ideas. They would just, in a 6-page story, they would have enough ideas for like a 12-issue miniseries of an American story. And not, I don't think
they would.
I'm disingenuous saying that. They just threw ideas at these stories. And to be honest, I don't know how they managed to keep up, to keep the quality of the work up, but they did. Like John Wagner and Pat Mills are, in my mind, the two best comic writers. There'll be other people that would disagree with that. But for me, for the characters they've created, for the consistency of their output, they're peerless in UK comics.
And that's even just for the stuff that they're named on.
Yep.
Those guys were doing Core and all these sort of comics as well before it. Yeah. So
absolutely. Their influence, Mills, Wagner, Kelvin Gosnell, you have Alan Grant. They were all ideas men in the background, as well as writers. And their contribution to comics, I think, is very understated because of the British influence then that went on to have on American comics and European comics too. But an awful lot of it starts with that small cohort of people that worked in comics in the mid-late 70s. And you can add names like Dave Hunt, Steve McManus. There was a group of people there working in IPC, and DC Thompson too, with Warlord and stuff. But they created something new because, they're saying comics were dying in the 80s and all the rest of that. Comics in the 70s were on a slowdown as well. So, if you're coming from sales of 200,000 and your sales dip to 150,000, that's a big drop. You're
going to get hatch, match, and dispatched, wouldn't you, if that happened? Yeah. I think Alan Hebden's worth a mention as well. I think in that little breath of voices, I think as well. Yeah. Well, it's a shame, isn't it? Because we started this conversation by saying we're in danger of forgetting all this stuff, and the British comics industry's a few titles now at most, really. Viz 2000 AD.
Yeah.
The Phoenix.
But if you look at it, it's probably in a much better place now than it was 20 years ago.
Right.
You have 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine. They seem solid. They seem safe. They seem they're publishing away. Good stuff.
They've got that subscriber base, haven't they? Which they know they've got. Yeah.
Rebellion are pushing out new stuff all the time. Battle seems to be semi-monthly at this stage. They've dipped their feet into Monster Fun, but even outside of Rebellion, you have Titan doing lots of new stuff, even though it's direct market stuff, but it's still, it's British orientated comics. You have the Phoenix, which has been like a roaring
Titan do a lot of European translations as well, don't they? I know they've done some Conan stuff. Yeah.
You have the like of Jamie Smart with his Bunny versus Monkey. Yeah. It's not a weekly, but it's a comic, and it's a huge seller.
Yeah.
So compared to what we have now, and you have a proper reprint of British comics, as opposed to 20 years ago, all you would have was Charlie's War 2000 AD, and I know Titan at the time they dipped their foot into the Steel Claw and a little bit of that, but other than that, there was no British material being reprinted. Now Rebellion have a full output of brilliant British material coming out. So British comics are in a much better place than they were 20 years ago, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. I suppose they're in a better place than they were 20 years ago because they kind of got their game together. Yeah. But we'd love them to be in a position that was 40 years ago or 45 years ago, I guess,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. But, time moves on. And if we were 40 years ago and we were looking nostalgia back to what was 40 years previous, again, it would be completely different. So time does move on. And no more than that, it's, American comics, even though they're in a good shape relative with the direct sales and all the rest of that. But if you look at their sales now compared to their sales when they were going out in newsstands, let's say in the late 70s,
Absolutely.
It's vastly different. It's incredibly different. And I think another thing that's worth pointing out about, and I think you touched it on earlier on, Tony, is that 2000 AD is a weekly comic. It has 5 stories every week. That's the equivalent, roughly, of 5 American monthly titles.
Right.
So You have a company there and then you add the Judge Dredd magazine into it. You have a company there that's publishing the equivalent of 7 or 8 monthly titles in Britain. That's successful, and that they're selling, and then that they're doing the trades out of it. So it's not like what it was 20 years ago or 40 years ago.
I think the important point of that is we need to treasure it, don't we? We need to look at it and read it, and 2008 sometimes gets a little forgotten, doesn't it? I think
100%. And as I said about Jamie Stewart's Bunny versus Monkey, the market has shifted, it has moved. So kids are still reading comics, they're just reading them in a different place, in a different format. Maybe not in the same amount, but it's still there.
And Jamie's
and I think
someone
we've still got sorry man.
Jamie's someone who's like, from adult sort of cartoon comics to moving in and being in the ground floor of the Phoenix and now he's book award winner.
He's still strong, and he's well over a decade and just full on.
He's one of those, I think. He's in a rare position because he has a generation of comics readers following him for who he is, and thankfully he's a lovely bloke. We've spoken to him, and he's just happy. He's happy to do it and have other people. And his style and his way of making comics has shifted because he used to do the sort of humour that would make us sort of laugh and like it was proper wrong stuff. And now it's like, well, I can't do that. That's not the comics I make now.
Yeah.
And now what he's doing is so much more important because all of these kids who are doing fan art of like Bunny and Monkey and stuff.
Yeah.
That's no different to the kids sending in the weekly Stormforce characters that they sketched. And
2000 AD used to run inside the cover, didn't they? They used to have all the sketches of the kids.
You know what I mean?
And I think Eagle did back in the day as well. Yeah.
And that's what keeps it alive, isn't it? This and the next generation who are going to.
And let's not forget about Viz. I mean, I'm a subscriber.
No.
Viz is still going strong. Viz is in every service station you pop into on every motorway in this country.
Yeah.
It's got a distribution better than any other comic pretty much in this country, and it's still going strong, and it's still funny as fuck.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing about Bunny versus Monkey, other publishers are now riding on the coattails.
Yeah.
And they're producing similar books and all the rest of that. And that's good for everyone. It's like as I said, to use a bad phrase, it's a trickle down. It's good for everyone.
Yeah.
It's good for everyone in
rising tide raises all
creating
ships.
comics.
Yeah. As long as you're making the comic because you want to make the comic because that will show through in the comic that everyone's reading, isn't it? People can. I think the general public can see through a fake most of the time. Even if it takes them a couple of issues, eventually they'll be like, there's nothing more to this than the first issue that they had.
We just need Jamie to do, I don't know, Robot Archie or the Sarge. I'd love to see his take on that.
Well, remember he did Desperate Dan for a long time.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about Hunt Emerson recently. He's doing the Beano now.
Yeah.
And now see some of that dude's saucy work.
Yeah.
You got to be able to do everything, didn't you?
Yeah, you do. So obviously, before we let you go, David, I mean, I think, what was your favourite comic then when you were a kid? What was the one title, the individual title? I know I'm putting you on the spot there. One. If you have to choose one.
If I had to choose one, it would be when I was growing up, 2000 AD. Had to be, hands down, 2000 AD, because I was at that age. I was a kid in the mid-early 80s. And that's, the stuff that pushed out every week. But looking back now, I have so many favorites. It's hard to pick a favorite child, that sort of way. But I do have a soft spot for the New Eagle as well.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about that on here. Yeah.
The first 2 or 3 years, I think it is in 2000 AD's shadow. Unfortunately, in 2000 AD's shadow, because the first 2 or 3 years of it was really, really good. Especially, and there's a lot of people out there that don't like the photo strips that were in the Eagle.
We have a good laugh over them. We had Tomlinson on. We're laughing over them. Yeah.
The Doom Lord photo strips are absolutely brilliant. They really are. They're both menacing and extremely funny.
Yeah.
In either hand, it's brilliant. It really is.
Here's something I was trying to remember it the other day. What's the story in New Eagle, which is the kid who's living in a sort of post-apocalyptic world?
That's Survivor.
That's great, man. That's really good. Yeah.
That is Barry Tomlinson and Jose Ortiz.
That's it. That's it. I love Ortiz. Love him. Yeah.
It's a Walking Dead before the Walking Dead.
Very much so. Yeah.
Really, really
and
good.
so tense.
Yeah.
There's bits because he'd been attacked by dogs and things like that, and you think, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has that been reprinted? Has that come out? No.
I'd like to. But
Yeah.
Was the new Eagle? Was that when Dan Dare went blonde? Is that when he looked like a bit like Flash Gordon? Yeah.
And the reason for that was that apparently at the time, someone held the film rights to the original Dan Dare, and they either objected or IPC didn't have the actual rights to do that version of Dan Dare at that time. So they said, "Feck it, it's his grandson. You'd be grand."
Because I remember they made a big deal when it went back to how he looked originally, when there was a big marketing thing.
Yeah, and that is another thing that it's a little bit overlooked. The first Dan Dare, it's the Return of the Meccan and the Firefly and all the rest of that. That's written by Pat Mills, John Wagner, and it's a really cracking story. And the art by Jerry Embleton and Ian Kennedy. It's such a shame that it is unpublished. It's fully painted stuff long before
Ian Kennedy.
Simon Bisley and all the rest of that. It's incredible, and it's just sitting there unpublished.
Ian Kennedy's my favourite.
We love Ian Kennedy,
painted artist in comics. He's untouchable. I think that man.
He is absolutely brilliant. So I hope someone out there with deep pockets can get that.
Well, get you to publish it.
Yeah. He's doing a great job. Yeah. But I mean, obviously, you've got to keep fighting the good fight and putting out more great books. And I can see that, like the Running Man and Editor's Cut that we've talked about, there is a pack where you can get the two new ones on your store. So where can people get the books and find out more about what you do?
It's my shop is on Comicsy, so it's comicsy.co.uk. You will find all my books there. And if you follow me at Hibernia Comics on Facebook, that's the best place to get hold of me.
Nice. And,
going old school there with the Facebook, Yeah, it's still a better community than all the other nonsense that's come since.
I just keep it simple, because you can have multiple access points and all the rest of that. But if you get me at Hibernia on Facebook, there you go, nice and easy.
And generally, Facebook's an older readership. Like it gets an older kind of crowd.
Crew in it, It's a 2000 AD crew as well,
100%, 100%. I've dipped my foot into other socials, and they're fine, they're great, but Facebook, you get most traction on Facebook.
Nice. Well, this has been a long time coming, but this is probably not the last time we talk to you, Dave. You'll be back now that we know where you are. We know where you live.
Mate, anything new you've got out for people? I think the Americans should be all over this. This is such new product for them. They weren't heard of. You definitely got to get on it.
But you do printed books. You don't do PDFs, or do you do PDFs? I mean, what is the deal?
I do PDFs of the comic archive, but I don't do PDFs of any of the collections because I don't have the rights for it. I only have rights for, but I do. If anyone wants a PDF of any of the comic archives, I can do a PDF of them. But we're still kind of old-fashioned. I still love to have a book in my hand, and that's what I'd ask.
Totally.
Yeah.
If you can, buy the book.
Yeah. There you go. If you can, buy the book. Go buy the book. And thank you, Dave. This has been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
not a bother. Listen, thanks for having me, guys. Cheers.
How good was that?
What a geezer!
Yeah,
what a good geezer on the show.
Yeah, and someone who's been like working at these publications for years. So seriously support them and keep an eye on it because you never know what gem's going to be out next. So
I was waiting for my opportunity for 10 years now to whip out my French Janus Stark volume.
Yeah,
and that's.
Mate,
I wonder what you're going to say then.
Yeah. Always worry.
Yeah.
Get out your Janus on camera.
Yeah. If he's going to whip something, he's going to whip something out. Thank God this is an audio show.
Looks like a helicopter.
Noel Edmonds pilots helicopters. Right, there we go.
He's massive.
He's got jacked up now. Have you seen him?
He has not got. I know he's
him.
in some sort of shape, but I'm not going to have it on this show that Dan Butcher is saying Noel Edmonds is jacked up.
He's fucking
on the front of health and fitness.
Yeah,
he's been on a load of tests, hasn't he? Fucking
has he?
Dropping. Yeah,
he's been injecting
Did you see him? He's fucking massive. You don't get like that if you're like
just chasing Mr. Blobby around the fucking front room. You don't get like that, do you?
Okay, these are not euphemisms; they're actually references.
Probably hasn't got a creepy bottom anymore.
Yeah, Matt Strott, please look up Mr. Blobby because I'll go on about him when I'm seeing you in October.
Yeah. But
not Mrs. Blobby. That's old.
From that sort of horror show to some great comics and stuff to talk about. Do we have any shout-outs this week, gents?
I've only got a couple this week. So, firstly, a little group thanks to everyone on the Slack for being. We won't name anyone, but there was somebody had a little wobble, and as we all do. And everyone sort of jumped to say, it's all right, why don't you try this, have a chat and all that blah. And I guess it's something we'll probably chat about in the future at some point, mental health, because it keeps coming up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As a subject. Maybe we'll get someone on. We keep promising to get someone on. But well done.
I think this Slack is a good community to be part of. If you're
supportive.
And, as well as things like that, there's just great conversation and discussion about comics. I'm sure this week's there'll be a lot of talk. There's different channels about, this artwork threads. I mean, seriously, if you want to be part of it, get in touch with us. It's an easy sort of messaging app. Slack is like a Discord. I mean, it's our version of a Discord, basically. That's what
that's what it is.
Slack is. And there's creators, guests, all kinds on there. So
a little bit of advice
from all over the world as well. From all over. The world.
And I fucking warmed my cockles this week. I tell you now.
Yeah,
lovely,
really
nice work,
lovely
guys.
Group of people. So,
yeah. And now just self-serving is on Saturday we had a new episode of Never on Anything on Hunt Emerson, and I was joined by Eamon Clark and Alan Henderson, and we talked about the man described as the foremost underground style artist in the UK, and I make him right on that as he is described in the Comics Journal. Go and buy a Hunt Emerson comic or a collection, or go to his site because he's got some absolutely brilliant original art for fucking peanuts. And it is beautiful, and he should be talked about more. He's Britain's Crumb, as far as I'm concerned. If Crumb also did the Beano, as well as having the string to his bow. And this dude has been doing the 14 times since the early 70s. He's been doing a page in the 14s. He did Fiesta magazine from I think 1981 to 2020. Did a page in that.
Bloody hell!
It's like fucking talk about prolific. Anyway, they're my two. Thanks, guys.
Nice. Dan, what have you got?
I've got a couple of Kickstarters. I've got from Rudetoons, Night Vision issues 1 to 4. Night Vision beats the streets in these 4 black and white comics created and drawn by Rudetoons, full of action, bad guys, and boobies. We've got Spearpoint, a World War II fantasy adventure comic book. A young witch and her friends are all that stand in the way of an invasion from an ancient underground race of creatures that's smashed through its target. It's got another couple of days on that, so you could jump in back that one with some scratch comics. Next up, Galaxy Grappling Alliance. Got another couple of weeks on this one. Galactic Rumble, you demanded it, now we're delivering like a DDT. A famous sci-fi wrestling book is back with GGA 3 Galactic Rumble. And finally, Open Casket 1 Wolf and Batsy full color art book 1999 to 2024. The first book in a series of supplementary volumes complementing Wolf and Batsy comics, which we've all kind of read and enjoyed. And you can too on Global. Yeah. Nice. And other places, I'm sure.
Nice. One that's it's just finished actually after our latest one, but you'll probably be able to get the book soon. Little shout out to Dan Wolf of SideQuesters who gave some nice feedback. But I was talking in last week's show about how he had a Kickstarter that had failed in one of the previous ones. And that, unbeknownst to any of us, he was currently running a Kickstarter at that particular time, which was successfully funded for SideQuesters.
Good stuff.
SideQuesters get to work. So
we hear that quite a lot of people who failed on one occasion go back at a rethink. Joey Oliveira talks quite openly about it, doesn't he? It was one of his projects. Yeah, I think it's something you should consider.
Yeah. So, but look up the comic. That's on Global Comics as well. So that's good fun. And support that creator. And speaking of those comics and all the things you should add to your wish lists, we've got a bunch to recommend to you all. Tony, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so I'm going to kick us off with one that is I'm going to review Lost in Tarnation, issues 1 and 2. Now, currently sitting on the starting block, so you can go and sign up for it, is issue number 4. And I was quite taken with this comic, so I think I will go and back that when it comes out. Written by Paul Dieter, who sent it in to us. Art and colours by Hiroshi Gabato. it's rare these days that art and colours come thematically involved. I think sometimes if you're reading the big two, they just go to a colorist and he adds his color. When you've got the artist doing both, there's a really interesting style adopted in coordination, and I'll talk about that a bit in a second. Title designed by Amal Desai. The cover, I really like the cover to issue 1. I'll describe it to you. It's very tone setting and storytelling. It's coloured with almost, it's hard to say, like a pastely, watercolory, muted effect, and the interiors of the comic are coloured in a similar way. And what he does is he uses almost like a muted colour in the background to extenuate the foreground stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a man sitting at a table, right? And this, I'm not sure how autobiographical this comic is. I don't know, Paul. If it is autobiographical, good on you, because you've got a lifestyle. But there's a little bit of the William Burroughs about this.
Right.
There's a little bit of the Naked Lunch. There's a little bit of the Book of Dreams. There's a little bit of the Junkie books. I used to read. We've all read Burroughs, haven't we, in our youths? He's one of those sort of cool writers, wasn't he? There's a little bit of that about it. But on this cover, he's sitting at a table, and he's eating, and he's being served by 2 men with flies' heads. But they're not like just cartoon flies. They're like really rotten fucking flies. And there's mushrooms growing out the eyeball of one of them and stuff like that. And he's serving cacti, that are in, rather than earth, it looks like they're in flesh on the plate, growing out of flesh. And rather than the spines of the cacti, there's hypodermic needles, which is also part of the storytelling thing. And he's sitting there eating the first bit of the meal, which is a dead skeleton horse, and he's eating the eyeball out of it. So you can see a bit of Naked Lunch there somewhere.
Yeah.
And it involves drug-induced hallucinations and stuff like that. And which was why I was kind of in from the moment onwards. So I really love the way this opens. And I know people are probably tired of me saying drop yourself into the action, but this isn't that kind of comic. And what it is, the opening page is a view of his back while his phone is ringing. And rather than answering the phone immediately, he's scratching his arse, lying in bed. And then he picks his phone up and starts speaking to it. And he has this sort of weird non sequitur conversation, which is the one-sided conversation you would get if you were watching that scene. You know, comics do comics, don't they? And comics can do stuff that other people can't do. So sometimes we'll get both ends of the phone conversation, won't we?
Yes,
and it'll make more sense. But in this, he's just saying sort of random words. And it is essentially what you would do if all you were hearing was... now, include into that, so he puts his glasses on while he's talking. In that, on the floor are cockroaches, but they've got the faces of old men looking up at him, and one sort of wagging its finger at him, and he stamps on it, and this bright blood explodes out of it, and you're like, this is really setting the scene. And what you then get is you kind of get a road trip. Well, a road trip if a road trip can include flying. So he gets on a plane. I think it's at LAX. It looks like LAX. If you've ever flown from LAX, it's the fucking worst airport I've ever been to in my life. It's awful. And he gets on a plane and he gets like drunk as a lord, and he has to convince the stewardess to give him another whiskey sort of thing. And he gets out, gets into a cab, and says, "Take me to the nearest cheapest motel." And he gets taken to this motel, and he walks into the motel reception. There's this receptionist here, and this is what made me laugh. He says, "I'm looking to score a room," and the receptionist, this bloke, sort of fat-headed bloke, says, "We've got plenty of rooms available." And he said, "I need something off menu." And he says, "Well, we don't do room service." And he says, "Have you got anything on the 8H floor?" And he goes, "8th floor? We've only got 3 floors." And he says, "No, H like the letter." And then there's this long silence, like a silent panel. And he goes, "Are you trying to buy heroin from me?" And he went, "Yeah, but I'd also like a room." And it's just like that. It's just like, I thought that's a great little scene. That's so well. It was it was real comedic, really worked.
Yeah.
He does end up scoring heroin. I'm not sure if it's off him, but he does a load of heroin, and we're off and running. And issue 2, he meets a girl, and it goes onwards and onwards. Tonally, it works well. There's the theme of it all flows so nicely, but you're not in a comic that is going to be crash bang wallop guns, etc., etc. Although he does order a cab, and the cab turns up, and it's an armadillo with a sort of humanish face, and he rides that, and then he sort of wakes up in the back of a taxi. So that whole playing on the is it real, is it not real thing, we talked a bit about it with the manga last week, didn't we? I like that he plays with the reader, and he has the ability of the writer and the artist working together to allow that to happen without it being confusing, I suppose. That non sequitur kind of thing again. He uses a lot of close-ups of faces which are slightly more realistic than the nonsense or craziness that's going on in the background, in a bit of a sort of Alice in Wonderland kind of way, like, but transferred to the streets of a big city in America and a lot of heroin. But the slightly more realistic faces are not what we expect now from a lot of Marvel and DC comics of a fucking movie star or something that's just traced into, you know, there's a real personality to this person's face. It really works well. It caught me laughing a couple of times. There's only one small criticism I'd have. The cover to issue number 2, as an effect, he uses there's these sort of creatures in the background, and he's sitting on a couch with a girl. He uses the creatures in the background, and he blurs them slightly. Now, I think you have to be careful about using that as an effect on a cover, especially in the world of Dropbox links and stuff like that, Google Mail links and whatever it's going to be, because I didn't think it had loaded properly for a while. Then I realised, oh, that's an effect. So just be careful of that. But tonally it works as well. It's currently published through Apollo City Comics. You can find them at apollocitycomics.com or on Insta, Apollo City Comics. Insta for Paul is at Lost in Tarnation Comics. Sometimes that's a good idea, isn't it? Just have an Instagram just for your comic, I'm going to say. Especially if it's very different from your life.
Yes.
And as I said, you can go and sign up for issue 4, which is called Dregs, Lost in Tarnation Dregs. If you look up Lost in Tarnation or Paul Dieter, Deeter, you'll find it. I did dig this. I did like it.
Nice.
It's right up my street. Don't do drugs, kids. Save them for me. What
a brilliant sign off that one is. I'm going to jump in with my first one this week. We've got a whole bunch, a few people this week. My one's also a little bit trippy, but in the best kind of way, because it's metal as fuck. Yes.
Nice.
Yes. I'm going to know that again. This is Dark Regards from Oni Press. This is one that's been on my radar for a little bit, because this is writer is Dave Hill, artist is Art Yom Topolin.
Oh, okay.
Colorist Brittany Peer, letterer Troy Pateri, designer Winston Gambro, editor Carl Bollers. It has some cover B. Andrew Cronkey
nice.
Did a version.
He looks like he had a bang up time at Heroes, didn't he? From what I'm seeing.
Yeah, so he should. Well worth it. And this is the first of 2 Oni Press books. So I'm going to talk about this.
All right.
I tell you what, I do like what Oni Press are putting out at the moment. They've been around for a while, but yeah, Dark Regards was kind of on my radar because I follow Dave Hill on Instagram. He's a stand-up comedian, and he's a musician, stand-up comedian. You know, he's sort of like quirky, awkward, but he's a fucking amazing guitarist. He just played the Download Festival a couple of weeks ago. But he does like funny musical humour. He's done live shows with Bill Murray and stuff like that. You know, if you follow him, he's genuinely like funny. But then he realised I thought, oh shit, he's made a comic book, and like he was at Forbidden Planets doing signings in London and stuff. Like he came to the UK. He's very much promoting the book. And I thought, oh, well, this is interesting, and I was interested to see. Okay, then, you know, the traditional. Here's the person that's famous in another thing, making the thing that we talk about on a weekly basis.
Yes,
what's this going to be like? And this is, I can happily say, this is a comic made by someone who reads comics, who enjoys comics, who gets the language of comics. It's also someone who loves music, makes music, gets the language of music. I mean, in a way that I don't, but certainly he listens to music that I listen to. But what is Dark Regards? Well, as it says, there's a big synopsis if you go to Amazon or Comixology. I'm not going to read all of it, it's just the initial bit. Sometimes you break the internet, and sometimes the internet breaks you. Alas, the true story of the viral hoax, so insane it could only be told as a comic book. And it is basically, it's a shockingly true, terrifyingly hilarious, and only modestly exaggerated tale of how one stand-up comedian forged a secret online identity as America's first true black metal icon and accidentally started an international incident that almost wiped Gary, Indiana off the map. I know nothing about the backstory. This is probably,
no, I don't either.
There's probably, it feels like he did something and then he's turned it into like a more fictionalized version.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
Because he's being interviewed at the beginning, and he is in the comic book. He's writing himself into a comic book, but it's strange because he's not glorifying, like, it's not like an amazing version of someone. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, he's writing this person. He's being interviewed at the beginning. He's got corpse paint. It's like he's being interviewed about, like, oh, well, what happened? So that's how we get the narrative structure of how it all began, and how when he was at school, he was in this band called Iron Donkey, who were playing this heavy metal.
There is a prog band called Iron Horse, isn't there? I don't mind them, actually. I wonder if that's a piss take on them.
And it's a great sort of, like, you can see the artwork by Topolin's brilliant as well. There's a real, it's easy to flow. It was a real quick read, this one, but at the same time, there's a lot to it. Do you know what I mean? They get a lot in. Beautiful colours, and it's, bands playing music and stuff, but there's a lot of, like, reading of lyrics, or, for instance, Iron Donkey, their lyrics go, Iron Donkey, a donkey made of iron, we bring you heavy metal so awesome it'll set your soul on fucking fire. And then the high school tells them that they suck. They're basically told, oh, you'll never make it. Cut to years later, he's trying to make it as a stand-up comedian, and his, the music's almost being left, that's the left behind kind of thing. And he's just trying to make it day by day. His love life, there's a romantic interest that doesn't go the way he thinks it's going to go, in quite a tragic circumstances. So he's just kind of like, he's just really fed up. Goes into a record store. It's called Molten Vinyl, because he walks past and he thinks, oh, I'll just walk into this, a vinyl record store. And anyone that's walked into a vinyl record store will know the sort of people that work, that, the people that know, that high fidelity people that know. And there's this sort of woman that's fairly sort of non-plush, covered in tattoos, and she just puts this record onto the player, starts playing it, and he's just flicking through some old sort of Iron Maiden and stuff like that. And over the speaker comes the lyric, I am the one true Satan, and I am coming for your anus by the dark of night.
Dan, have you made a record?
If I did, I'd make the lyrics something like that.
Yeah. And that is, he's immediately like, what? It's that revelation of, what is this music? And he's then told, this is a Norwegian black metal band. So he immediately gets the album. And he's wearing an Iron... There's a wonderful it's just a little scene, couple of panels. He's wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt, and she's like, oh yeah, where'd you get that? Urban Outfitters. He goes, oh no, this is from the first lineup. And she's like, okay, who were the first lineup? And he reads out the name of the original Iron Maiden. It's like, oh, that was before that they are who they are now. So it's like you get that sort of nerdy musician sort of.
Big shout out to Johnny T's, mate, because he went and saw them last night.
Yeah, my brother went and saw them.
Nice.
Well. Yeah. And they still fucking kill it.
They're still great, man.
Yeah.
Still my favourite metal band.
Yeah. And of course he's just buzzing in the way that, like, I mean, we've all had it with music. We've all had it with comics. When you're buzzing, like, I need to listen to this. And he's just lying there. There's these lovely scenes of, like, he's just there, lying back. And he's got, like, a plaid shirt and stuff. And he's looking so chilled out. But the music he's listening to is so aggressive and over the top and talking about Satan that he goes back into the store. But then there's almost like a slightly supernatural bent that happens. Like it's starting to change his life. Like he's getting messages as if, like, this, you have a calling. He asked for loads of this was my favourite page when he says, have you got anything more like that band? And she goes through and goes, okay, you're going to need Raven Spawn from Oslo, and there was Viking Colon from Bergen, Brutal Symphonic, and you'll probably need counselling after hearing it. And he's like, awesome. There's Misery Buffet from Denmark. He goes, Misery Buffet from Denmark. Do you have a pacemaker? No. Why? I'm legally required to ask before I sell you this one. Amazing. And then the best one. And finally, Blood-Soaked Warning Ignorers from Trondheim. What floor is your apartment on? The second. You should probably be okay then. Just wear a helmet while you're listening. And and I was immediately like, this is amazing. But he listens to this music and then he starts having dreams and like this prophecy of like, you need to start your own thing. You need to become the next king of black metal. And your band should be called Witch Taint. And so he decides, but in these sort of dreams he's told, look, to be black metal, you've got to be like, no bullshit. You've got to call people out on their bullshit. You know, you've got to be aggressive and in people's face. And he's just this normal dude, so he decides to get some corpse paint, and then he decides to, like, he wants to turn his bedroom into more of a cave-like structure, so he throws his mattress out and he's trying to make stalactites that go in his room. And then as it goes on, the thing that I think that kicks off the story, I mean, there's so much joy within the writing and the way the art is. I think it kicks off because he goes onto an online forum to like a heavy metal record label and says, who the fuck do you think you are? You're not black metal. This is all pussy shit. Do you know what I mean? Blah, blah. He really calls them. He just says all this stuff. He goes, dark regards, the king of black metal. And then the people on the other side are going, who the hell is saying this? And they reply, to whom it may concern, blah, blah. And they're, you know, I think you'll find we're really metal. And then he's like, black metal people wouldn't say to whom it would concern. And he starts like something kicking off. And whereas he's thinking, he thinks no more of it, the other people on the other side are thinking, we need to take this person out.
It's a bit like the old punk thing. You're not punk, I'm punk. It's a bit like that, isn't it?
It's that sort of thing. But the way that the characters talk, and the way they look, the design of like these metal people, it's just brilliant because there's a bunch of them about to catch a plane, and they've even got like, you know, they're all wearing dark leathers and stuff. And someone said, "Does everyone have their boarding pass?" I have mine downloading on my phone, but they're like these huge. It looks like a Viking sort of blows. Like, I've got mine downloaded on my phone, and they're just talking about these mundane things. It's the absurdity of that sort of that culture, but it's also a very normality. There's a normality to it because when you're in it, it's perfectly normal. Do you know what I mean?
What it is, yeah,
it's totally what it is.
Like comics.
Exactly, and I think that's why. There's a beautiful marriage, and the language.
You're not comics.
Yeah. You think this is comics? Blah, blah, blah.
You're not proper comics. Yeah.
But definitely, these are great comics. The second issue 2 is on sale. It says it on sale June 2025. So I presume the second one's just come out. I'm looking forward to seeing more of this. This sort of delivered on it. So I'm going to be following this one, and it gave me that sort of. And anyone who's there's a lot of sort of comedy. You know, there are comedies or. I know there's some dark films.
Sounds a bit Fingerman-y to me.
There's a little
bit like that.
There's an energy. There's that sort of writing energy. I think. Yeah. I think you should read this.
Check it out.
Yeah. Issue 1's on Global Comics, but I think I'm going to be following it day and date from now on. So check that out. That's Dark Regards from Oni.
See old Crimson Cowl. That's out on Wednesday, isn't it?
Oh, nice.
Second issue of that one. Yeah.
Cool.
I've read that after you guys talked about it on the pod, and I've really enjoyed it.
Cool. We'll talk about issue 2 then. Yeah.
Dan, what have you got?
Yeah. I've got Yeet magazine. Do you know what?
I'm interested to hear about this. Yeah, this is a running thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I put a message up on one of the indie comic groups on Facebook, and I said, like, has anyone got any books they want me to take a look at? I do. I'm on a really uber popular podcast called Comics Podcast.
Yeah.
People are like, what? Who? But I've got a few responses. One of them. A chap named Mike on Facebook. He said, I've got some copies of this magazine. I'll send it through to you. And I said, yeah, email it through to this. He went, no, I'll send you through the printed versions. And Mike's in the States, so he sent over 2 copies of Yeet magazine, issues 65 and 66. So I was like, 65, 66, is this the kind of like a bit of a bit? You know, like when they...
Yeah. It's like when Local Man went to issue 25. Do you remember they did that, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not though, is it?
No. So this is issue 65 and 66. They've been publishing this comic for years. There's a slight history of it on YouTube, which I'll put the link up. And essentially they were doing like a kind of a superhero comic, like just as Image was big, their kind of take on that, and they had artists and creators coming in. and they were doing like a flip comic. I don't know how that comic, I think it was called Chaos. I don't know how that comic became this, but it's their publishers, Costa Paper Comics, and it's old guys who like old comics. Like, the old Comics Code Authority. Yeah, that's us. There's a few of us around the globe, and from what I'm trying to piece this together as much as I can. There's a patron page, and if you become one of the patrons, they will, every time the new issue comes out, they'll print it and send it to you, and that's all included in the price. I don't know how they source the strips. I'm not sure. It's more like a fanzine where people contribute comics to like an anthology style series, and then they send it out. The 2 issues I've got, 66, 65. 65 appears to be a lot of Western stuff, but then there's other comics in it. I think there's like long running characters that pop in and out of the title, so they might be in a couple of issues, and then the artist is working on another one, and you won't see that till another 5 issues time. So, like all anthologies, there's comics here that are going to appeal to you, and some not so. Some of the stuff in the Western one was great. With like, there's a story with a young lad whose father's passed away, and the only thing of worth that he's got is his dad's ex-army pistol, and he takes it into town, and 2 sort of ruffians have their eye on it and try and take it off of him, and he gets a bit of a helping hand, and the marshal thinks this little kid's gunned down these 2 wanted felons. He gets the money for it, and him and his mum do all right out of it. And then later on, excuse me, he goes to visit the guy that actually shot him, who's kind of like in hospital, and says, "Look, I know you did it. It wasn't me. I didn't even fucking pull the gun." And it's a real nice little Western tale, sort of done over like 6-7 pages, and it's a story that is perfect for that comic. There's no more to it, but it's really well done. The art and write on both the titles vary. Some of it is absolutely fucking amazing. Other it is like people's first foray into to try and some of the comic book work. But man, I was kind of impressed. The idea of kind of running a comic series that long, excuse me, and just 65 issues. That's fucking amazing. So I'm going to keep looking into these guys. Yeah. So they've been going since 1994. They says their comics have always been free. In order to continue the tradition, they rely on donations from readers, and I think that's the patron group. You subscribe, they cost us the cover of the comic, the price of the comic, and the shipping. Yeah, go check it out. It's patreon.com/Yeet YEET magazine.
That's an interesting model. I get Zach Cahill's comics through because I'm on his. I like that model. Zach makes good comics as well, and you get them through. Yeah, cool.
Nice.
It's one of the. I've been thinking about what I'm going to do when Vanguard's all done and dusted, and that kind of model really appeals.
Yeah,
I've got to say, that model appeals. So, nice work, guys.
Nice.
And, go check him out.
Thank you for sending them all that way. That's very generous. Very generous.
Fucking well generous.
I'm going to jump on just quickly with my second recommend.
All right, baby cakes.
This is a jump back on to the series Out of Alcatraz, once again from Only Press. This is written by Christopher Cantwell, artwork by Tyler Crook. This is the story of Frank Morris and Clarence Anglin, who are washed ashore in San Francisco after surviving their infamous escape from Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary in June 1962. So inspired by a true life event, and but this is the most. It's a taut, brutal, and breathtaking crime thriller. This one, I think issue 5, which is on its way, is going to be the conclusion of it. I got caught up with issues 2, 3, and 4. After, and I spoke about issue 1 when it first came out because I loved that sort of style of it. I absolutely obliterate this one. This is tense, gripping stuff. Very much edge of the seat. You don't know what's going to happen. Pretty brute. There's some horrible people in this, and not just, we've got these convicts and they're not necessarily nice. There's a character who is believed dead, who isn't dead, and they're trying to catch up with the main two, and there's a bit of a path of destruction being left in their wake. And there's a federal manhunt as well. There's certain authorities who would just believe, well, they just drowned. But there's these two officers who kind of convinced that there might be more to it. I think they're from different sort of offices, and they're very, at first they seem very adversarial, and then you soon learn that they are two homosexual men. Secretly, they are in a relationship. So, and of course, in 1962 and that sort of time period, there's a bit of that going on, and that what's going on there. But every part of the story, because it deals with a lot of different things culturally of the time, is handled very well. It feels to me almost there's a Coen. You know, when you think about the best and most brutal Coen brothers type stuff. You know, your Blood Simples, you know, there's certain bits of Fargo, or, you know, the No Country for Old Men, that sort of that tension is pretty much that, but in the 60s kind of thing. It does sort of I mean, Tyler Crook he's one of my just getting, and the more you see of this book, the more I was like, God, He lets like these ink washes and these colours over his inks. It's just like these they're glorious days, but there's an element of, it still feels vintage.
He did a bit of that with Harrow County, didn't he?
Yeah,
there was
and
a
that
dated
vibe,
look to it.
Yeah. Whereas I would say it's almost like he's doing the same sort of style, you could say, but just that slight tweak of, instead of horror, it's a crime thriller. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Just that little change in the direction, it works perfectly. I haven't read anything by Christopher Cantwell before, but his writing's really on point, because there's a few different things going on, and it does say.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. I'm just looking at some of his artwork from it. It's almost like he's walked a little bit towards Darwin Cook's style.
Some of the colours are so strong on it, aren't they? With the
But yeah, there's almost like a Mad Men look to some of the characters' faces. You know, that's because of that period setting type thing.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. But there's also a point of, like, we get a lot of, you know, there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of talking, but occasionally there's just 2 panels on a page, not even much background, but it's such a moment that you think, fuck, this is not good.
That stuff when they're in the water is fucking gorgeous.
Yeah. It's just, you know, if nothing else, go in to just look at the artwork, but you read the story, and that's something else as well. It does say on the inside cover, which I don't know why I'm just picked up on this. It says, the content warning: this story contains biased language and attitudes accurate to the time and setting, which do not reflect the feelings, beliefs, and perceptions of its creators and publisher. Which I think is an interesting thing to put, because I think if you're going to make a story set in the past, and it to be true of the past, because I think there's a lot of people who don't try to be. They write something modern set in the past, and that's not what you got to do. You know,
Totally.
It's uncomfortable and it's nasty. And if you want to, I think that statement has to be there, because nothing about this feels.
For me, it's a given, man.
Yeah,
you would think
Tony,
it's a given, but
we have to fucking put hot coffee on fucking coffee.
But it is
fucking idiots.
But you have to say it for people, because because people won't look at that little section on the inside cover. They'll read it and they'll say something, and the publisher can then go, "Look, we've got a bit that says there."
I know, it's sad that we're in that world, man. I'm so
you got fucking
so
K
sad.
at the lowest common denominator.
Fucking hell.
I mean, all I saw was a really good story that felt very. It just felt very on point. But like I say, it is violent. There is some nastiness to it, but it's well written nastiness. It's fucking gorgeous nastiness, and I'm interested to see. It's the sort of story I can't imagine anything ending well. But we shall see. We shall see when Out of Alcatraz finishes. And I know that the trade's going to come out, I think, in October this year. But I can't wait that long. I'm not going to wait for the trade on this. I need to read the.
And be on it.
Yeah, I'm going to be on it. So that's my one. Who's next?
You got one to go, Dan, or you got a second one?
No.
Just me then.
Finish this off.
Okay.
I can't recommend
Cool.
another one.
Okay, so before I do it, a little shout out to Dave R. I promised to give him a shout out this week. He is in no way a lookalike for Captain Haddock. That is a rumour that I want to squash straight away.
Okay. Or
Does he have
amplify.
a,
Either way,
blue
you've
jumper?
done it.
Got a blue jumper with a little anchor in the middle.
Yeah, and he wears a captain's hat.
Yeah.
So my
Coincidental.
my second last choice is Zagor, the Forest of Crossed Destinies. The Forest of Crossed Destinies, written by Giorgio Giussfredi. Art in a particular house style actually is Alessandro Piccinelli. It's £10.01 from Forbidden Planet at the moment. If you want to buy it anywhere else, it's going to be around £14.50. Lovely oversized hardcover. I'm going to say it's probably about 80 pages long, something like that. I'm looking at it because there's not numbered pages in it, and it doesn't say in the Forbidden Planet entry. For the uninitiated, Zagor, which is short for Zagor Tournai, is a long-running Western character out of Sergio Bonelli Editore, which is the big Italian company. We talked about it before. I can't remember if it was on here, or maybe I talked to Eamon about it. But it's the big company that is selling numbers like we wish we could sell. They're the company. They also do Dylan Dog, which obviously we talked about previously, Martin Mystery, Tex, if you've heard of Tex, which is a sort of Western story that Joe Kubert drew some for as well. Nathan Never, and absolutely loads more. Not enough of it gets translated. Whenever I'm in Italy, I always pick up a couple. They're almost like a digest size, slightly bigger than digest. Lovely little books. Thankfully, Epicentre are putting these out along. I think this is maybe like the 4th or 5th Zagor they've put out. They've put out maybe 4 or 5 Dylan Dogs as well, and it has got a decidedly old school appearance to the strips in it. You could easily say that probably since it started coming out, which it originally came out in 1961, so it came out contemporaneously with the Fantastic Four 1. That's how long it's been running, and in a way, a lot of the art hasn't changed massively. This is in colour. If you get a lot of the other stuff, it's in black and white. So there's a couple of other. I bought another volume with it at the same time. So in this, Zagor he's a white male who, in atoning for the sins of his father, has become a self-proclaimed protector of the American indigenous people, all the different tribes. He's sort of adopted this role, and it adds into the mix quite a lot of sort of magical elements. A lot of the magical stuff is, the spirits of the Chaniqua tribe and, this sort of thing, the medicine men and all this sort of thing. It also fits in the occasional bit of sci-fi. Or he'll suddenly be in Antarctica, or he'll suddenly be fighting a polar bear, or something like that. So he looks like a sort of clean-cut, short-haired, 1950s, 1960s dude who happened to have found his way into the jungle, or into the plains of America, and he's got like a red t-shirt on with a circular design on it, not totally dissimilar to a bat. I think it's like a raven, and he carries a tomahawk. That's him, but he's also a cowboy kinda, and he's always got this little geezer called Chico with him, who's a sort of little mustachioed, fat and bumbling, but kind-hearted Mexican sidekick. So it does fall into sort of societal cliche.
Little.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I didn't say racial, but there's a little bit of that in there somewhere. It's massively po-faced, straight. He plays sort of straight-faced, but comes across as really wacky as well.
Okay.
Just sort of strange. I put a thing out on the Slack today to say, has anyone read this? Anyone heard about it? And there's a little group of us on there who are kind of the old heads.
Yeah.
Simon, Pete, Alan. And we sort of all said, yeah, I think I've seen it. I think Matt Schofield hadn't even seen it, I think. It's incredible. This book has sold millions. It's been running since 1961 in Italy.
And you showed me the cover, the first time I'd ever seen anything like that.
Really?
Never seen it before.
And it's quite iconic. He's quite an iconic looking character, isn't he, really?
Yeah.
So it's a Western. I like them all. I like all these sort of books. If you can find, I'll often from Italy. In Italy, I'll buy like something in Italian, not be able to read it. But Tex is a little bit more of a straight Western for this. It has. I won't talk the whole thing, but the opening chapter really got my interest. So he's in this sort of fight. He's been challenged by this other dude. He's called Bull Snake, and he's in a battle. They're in the woods, and he's there. It's like the challenge. So they're fighting each other, and during the fight, he gets shot in the back. And next thing you know, he wakes up in the back of a carriage with Chico in the front seat and holding the reins, and he's suddenly long white beard, long white hair, and you think, what the fuck's happened there?
Well, yeah, what's happening there?
And it's really well done, and I loved that intro. I think that's a lovely little thing to throw in. Like
Yeah.
that. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure I worked out how they rectified it. It's not the straightest of narratives, and it's got a little bit confusing because there are characters from other series and other stories or not other stories within this series that pop in, and you're like, I don't really know who he is, but I'm going with it. I just went with it. Yeah, got a little bit lost, but I just sort of reveled in the storytelling. It's old school. People who know what they're doing really good storytelling. I'm going to say, if I've got one small fault with it, it goes back to a cover, which is similar to the earlier one I did, where the title of this, I showed you boys it, didn't I? The title of this just makes no sense, the way it's written across the page.
Yeah.
The Forest of Crossed, and then I thought, Destinies, and I thought, is Destinies like a publisher or something? It's just all split up, and it doesn't really make any sense. But otherwise, it's in a nice yellow hardcover, nice little image on the back of it. Yeah, and it's, as I said, if you get this from FP, it's only £10.
That's all right.
And I know Gareth Brooks laughed at this last week, but that's the same. That's less than the price of some of those stupid floppies in Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, overpriced nonsense.
Yeah.
In Gosh, but yeah, and it's just great. It's just cracking storytelling. Zagor, there you go.
Nice.
Mate, you fucking showed us that page of that X-Men title today. I couldn't believe it. I just
But the Friendship Festival.
Friendship Festival.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ.
I believe the audience. So, like, weren't you like the people who did the island, and you said you were going to be like mutant supremacists? Are you the same people as them? Yeah, we're the same people. We're doing friendship now. Okay.
Oh, good. Here comes a Sentinel. Hold it.
Yeah.
Friendship Festival.
Well, every week on this show is a friendship festival.
And we're naked.
Because we are all about the love of comics, and we hope you enjoyed all of those great comics that we talked about. And discover something. Go down that rabbit hole that we're all doing, and see what you can find. And if there's anything else you want us to talk about on future episodes, there's several different ways you can get in touch with us. You can email us awesomecomicspod@gmail.com. Follow us on social media at awesomecomicspod on Instagram, at the awesomepod on X. Where did you listen to us? Maybe it was on the website awesomecomics.podbean.com. On Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe, leave a review, get some word out about the show, algorithms and stuff. The more that people interact and say nice things, the more people will discover about the show, and this little show about independent comics will pop up on feeds and stuff. We're ingrates, so we don't know how to game the system on that. Same with Spotify. And look, if there's a little bit of a delay on Spotify, if you're listening on Monday, sometimes it just happens.
I don't know why that happened. It's just a bit of a blip, wasn't it? Really, but thanks for everyone for letting us know. But it's just, I don't know. We can't explain it. We ain't got a clue, have we?
No. We haven't got any money to give them to put us at the top of the list, which is where you come in. And whether it be on Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, Podnose, Podknife, what other networks are we on, Tony?
We're on the Pod Network. Every yawn is a potential blowjob opportunity if you are fast enough.
Yeah. It's in this same school of thought of anything's a dildo if you're brave enough.
I like that one as well. That's a good one.
Yeah. All I got to say is I can't meet you next week.
All I'm saying is t-shirt ideas.
merch. That's what it all is. And likewise, if you want to get some merch, acpgear.redbubble.com. We might not put those on shirts, but there will be some other shirts.
Pay us a lot of money, we will.
Where can people find us online, etc., Tony?
neveronanything.com or Tony Ez on Substack.
Nice. Damn.
Read Vanguard at vanguardcomic.com, and I'm usually at Vanguard Comic on various things.
Nice. You can find me on social media at Jess the Diablo. Thank you very much for listening, as always. we hope you're enjoying the comics you're reading, the comics you're making that we're going to be talking about on future episodes. So let us know about them. And until next week, which will be a little bit different, but it'll be a bit of fun. Who knows what it'll be like? But we know what it will be, and that'll be full of comic talk. So until then, same bat time, same bat channel from Dan, Tony, and myself in ACP Towers. Have a brilliant week. Read loads of comics. Keep making loads of comics. And what else should they do, guys?
Stay awesome.
Stay awesome.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.